My mom kicked me out to make room for her new family, then had the nerve to ask me for my college savings. Imagine your own mother kicking you out at 16, abandoning you for her new family. Now, nearly 2 decades later, she waltzes back into your life, not with an apology, but with an outrageous demand that would make your blood boil. This story, it's about my mother, my half-siblings I barely knew, and how success, for some people, just brings out the absolute worst. To give you some context, my mom had me when she was only 20. My biological father? He was never in the picture. She told me he didn't want kids, and since they'd only been dating a few months when she got pregnant, she gave him an out. He took it, no questions asked. She said their breakup was so bitter, she never even bothered to demand child support, and honestly, he probably wouldn't have paid anyway. It was easier for both of them to just disappear from each other's lives. Luckily, my grandparents were incredible. Their support was unwavering, and it meant my mom could finish school and actually build a career. Mom dated a few guys when I was little, but when I was about 8, she started seeing Harry, a coworker. They dated for over 3 years before getting married. Harry and I? We weren't super close, but we tolerated each other just fine. Then, about 4 years into their marriage, my mom got pregnant. With twins. Everyone was over the moon, me included. Looking back, maybe I should have seen the writing on the wall. But I was just so caught up in the idea that my mom, who'd raised me through so much, would always be my constant. I thought, surely she won't leave me now. But even during her pregnancy, things started to shift. She obviously pulled away after marrying Harry, and we just drifted. I convinced myself it was just a phase, that things would get better once the babies arrived. I tried to be supportive, but every time I was around, she seemed to get angrier. To avoid upsetting her, I tried to make myself scarce, to just disappear. But apparently, I wasn't invisible enough. 6 months after the twins were born, Mom and Harry sat me down for a serious conversation. They told me they couldn't keep me in the house anymore. Said they had 2 babies to look after now, and it was too much. I had just turned 16, so legally, they couldn't just kick me out without getting into serious trouble. So, they tried to convince me to leave, painting this picture of financial hardship, of how their meager income couldn't support a big family. Seriously? We had been living comfortably. I remember thinking, 2 web engineers can't support 2 adults, 1 teenager, and 2 babies? It was transparent. They just wanted me gone. I didn't want to leave, not really. I even tried to offer solutions. I offered to get a job, to help out financially. And my mom looked me in the eye and said she wanted to save money and resources for the twins, because they deserved it more. She said they deserved to stay with them more than I did, not that they needed it more. That was it. That's when I knew. No one wanted me. They knew I had too much self-respect to stay where I wasn't wanted. They just nudged me right out the door. Didn't even tell me where I should go. Their strategy worked. They hadn't technically evicted me, but it felt exactly the same. I felt like I had no choice. They'd pushed me into an impossible situation. The day I left, I went straight to my grandparents' house. They were heartbroken by what my mother had done, but they still wanted to be involved in the twins' lives, so they didn't cut her off completely. At 16, I knew I couldn't rely on my elderly grandparents financially, so I found a part-time job. I'd occasionally see Mom and Harry when they'd visit my grandparents with the kids, but it was always so formal. They rarely asked about me, acted like they didn't miss me at all. Honestly, it looked like they were happier without me around. It stung to see my mom so visibly less irritable, but what could I do? I lived with my grandparents until college. When it was time to move into my dorm, my mom wasn't involved, of course. My grandparents, bless them, weren't healthy enough to help, so my friends stepped up. Mom and Harry flat out refused, saying they needed to save every penny for the twins' future. So I had to take out student loans. Luckily, one of my uncles co-signed for me, with the understanding that he'd never be on the hook for payments. I worked my tail off through college, making sure I never missed a payment, always trying to get ahead financially. Mom and I barely spoke. When I graduated, only my grandparents were there. My own mother didn't even bother to congratulate me. After college, I moved out on my own, determined not to be a burden to my grandparents. Those first few years were tough, living on a shoestring budget. But I paid my rent, my utilities, bought my groceries, and started chipping away at my student debt, all while squirreling away some savings. And eventually, things got better. It took time, but I climbed the ladder at my company. I'm so incredibly proud of how far I've come, especially since I did it with next to no help. Now, I'm in a really comfortable position. Then, out of the blue, my mother, who I hadn't spoken to in years, somehow found out I was doing well. I'm almost 33 now, in a senior management role at the same company where I started. About 4 months ago, I got a massive promotion. I wanted to keep it quiet, so only a select few knew. The one person I did tell was my uncle, the one who co-signed my college loan. I wanted to thank him. Turns out, he ran into my mom and Harry at a family gathering and, with the best intentions, urged her to contact me and congratulate me. She never did, of course, but somehow, she did eventually learn about my success. And then, Harry and she just showed up at my house, insisting on talking. Let me be clear, I hadn't spoken to her since I started college. I blocked her everywhere, cut her out of my life completely, because there was no point hoping she'd change. And honestly, I don't think she even noticed. Only my grandparents were in contact, and they knew better than to bring her up. I wasn't really in touch with my uncle, either, so I had no idea my mom and Harry had been struggling financially for a few years. I only found out how bad things had gotten when they were standing right there on my doorstep. It was pure wishful thinking, but I let them in, clinging to this tiny hope that maybe, just maybe, they were finally here to make amends. But no, they started by saying they had heard from my uncle about my promotion, how I was one of the youngest in such a prominent position. Instead of congratulations, though, they were surprised I'd kept it from them. The irony was suffocating. I was flabbergasted they thought I'd communicate with them at all, let alone share good news. Then they launched into how disappointed I was for cutting them out, claiming it was only because they prioritized their children. They insisted I should have been old enough as a teenager to understand their rearranged priorities and not harbor resentment. Said I should have supported their decisions, not gone running to my grandparents. I mean, seriously? Why on earth would I agree with their decision to kick me out? They were trying to gaslight me, making me feel like I was the bad guy for being angry about being abandoned so they could have more time with their real children. That's how our reunion, after all these years, began. They talked about how tough the last few years had been, without even letting me get a word in. They'd started their own company, which had failed spectacularly, leaving them deep in debt. Now, with the twins nearing college age, they were desperate for money. And just like that, the real reason for their visit clicked. They needed financial help. They didn't even waste time getting to the point, trying to soften it by saying I could make it up to them by paying for my siblings' schooling. They were actually upset I hadn't contacted them despite my success. Their attempt to frame it as them doing me a favor by letting me pay for the college education of 2 kids I barely knew. It was astounding. I told them, right then and there, that I wouldn't be doing any such thing, that it was incredibly disrespectful of them to think they could coerce me. I was furious. I reminded them that they were the reason I worked my way through college and paid for my own education, because they wanted to save for their real children, the ones who deserved it more. They refused me financial support back then, and I made it clear they had no right to expect anything from me now, especially not money. I had never questioned their choice to put the twins first. I just left them alone. I pointed out that they could now use all that money and resources they'd conserved for the children who deserved it more to pay for the twins' college bills. I had nothing else to say. I just told them to leave. I felt like such an idiot for even letting them inside, for thinking they might have come to apologize. When I insisted they leave, they got even angrier, trying to shift the blame to me. They actually claimed I wasn't innocent in all this. Said I was over-enthusiastic, over-involved, and frequently irritable when we lived together. Are you kidding me? I was a teenager just trying to stay connected to my family as they actively pushed me away. I couldn't believe that was their real problem with me. Then, the absolute audacity. They claimed I was no better than them for denying their request. Said I was forgetting all the years my mother took care of me and raised me alone. They actually said this was my opportunity to make it up to her and my siblings, but I was being rude and unappreciative. It was insane. I was a child then. I couldn't choose not to rely on them. And let's be real, they weren't helping me. They threw me out the moment they thought I could manage on my own, then ignored my existence for the next 18 years. I was absolutely floored they had the gall to expect anything from me, like I owed them. The argument got incredibly personal and ugly. Finally, I threatened to call the police if they didn't get off my property. My mother, in a final desperate attempt, tried to remind me of all her sacrifices when I was younger, claiming she only ever wanted to be a good mother. After more screaming, they finally left. She flung one last insult at me, saying I was ungrateful and that I was portraying her as the villain instead of sympathizing with her struggles. For a while after, that really bothered me. Was I the one to blame? Was I expecting too much from her, or was she just trying to manipulate me? I was pretty sure I was in the right, but I decided to post my story online just to get some unbiased perspectives. Just an aside, I did talk to my uncle about what happened. His intentions were good, but I had to tell him that sharing my life with my mom and giving her my contact details without my consent was out of line. He was super apologetic, said he had no idea about their financial troubles or how my mom would react. He admitted it wasn't his business, and if my mom and I wanted to reconnect, we would have done it without his help. Since his heart was in the right place, and he was the one who helped me go to college in the first place, I'm not cutting him off. He just made a mistake, and we're good now. I also talked to my grandparents. They completely agreed with me. They said they'd try to talk some sense into my mom. They understood the financial strain my mom's family was under, but they felt it was totally unfair to put that on me. They want to stay in touch with their other grandchildren, which is why they haven't completely cut my mom off, and I respect that. Anyway, after that initial confrontation, my mom decided her new tactic was email. For about 9 days, she sent me an email every other day, trying to guilt-trip me into feeling like I owed her. You know, reminding me of all she did for me growing up. Seriously? Raising me wasn't a favor. It was her legal responsibility, and she only bothered when it was convenient for her. The moment I became an inconvenience, she and Harry kicked me out to save money for the twins. Well, now the twins are adults. It's their turn to be self-reliant, not mine. I ignored her for a while, but then I decided to respond. I laid out everything I had said to her face. As expected, she didn't take it well and called me ungrateful again. I just told her that name-calling wouldn't change the truth. She had been a bad mother, and I wanted no more contact. Then I blocked her email. She made a new one. I blocked that one too. I'll keep doing it until she understands I'm not here for her drama. Honestly, I'm glad it all happened. It brought me closure. For a moment, letting them into my house, I clung to this silly hope that maybe they had changed, that they were there to apologize. But that conversation cemented it. They are incapable of regret, guilt, or shame. I've completely given up on any chance of reconciliation. Then came the most bizarre thing my mother has ever done. She showed up at my workplace. Luckily, I was taking a sick day, feeling a little under the weather, and thank God I did. If I'd been there, she absolutely would have caused a scene, tried to humiliate me. My receptionist called, telling me my mom was there, demanding to see me, refusing to leave even after being told I wasn't in. When they put her on the phone, I was already a nervous wreck, imagining what she might pull. I firmly told her I was at home. Then I laid it out. If she tried anything at my job, I would sue her into oblivion. Sue her until she couldn't even think about sending her precious children to college. I made sure my voice was dripping with threat, and I think it worked. She actually agreed to leave immediately, but only if I'd agree to meet her in person. I told her she wasn't in a position to make demands, that she couldn't afford a lawsuit right now. I also pointed out that my employer wouldn't hesitate to sue her if things escalated, and they wouldn't be as forgiving as I was. She'd be much better off just leaving quietly. I didn't get any more calls or notifications, so I guess she finally left. That was a terrifyingly close call. I knew I couldn't let it happen again. I decided then and there to speak with a lawyer to figure out what my options were. She hadn't directly threatened me, so I wasn't sure if a restraining order was possible, but I needed to explore every avenue. I just hoped that humiliating experience was enough to make her back off, at least for a while. Well, I guess I don't have to wonder anymore if there are grounds for a restraining order. My mom proved it herself. Last week, I managed to get her to leave my workplace, but this week, things escalated beyond anything I could have imagined. I came home from work a few days ago, and there she was, waiting outside my door. I immediately told her I wasn't going to argue, and if she didn't leave, I was calling the police. As I reached for my phone, she raced at me, threw me to the ground. My phone went flying. She started cursing, blaming me for everything wrong in her life, and tried to physically attack me. It took me a second to process her insane behavior, but I work out regularly, and I'm much younger. It was easy to overpower her once I snapped out of my shock. Luckily, All the yelling alerted my neighbors, who called the police. They even came out and helped restrain her until the cops arrived. When the police finally got there, I didn't hesitate. I pressed charges. She is in a lot of trouble now. I've already spoken with my attorney, and we're getting that restraining order. And get this. I've heard Harry has taken the kids and moved in with his parents. Apparently, after bailing her out, he finally confronted her about her behavior. Told her she couldn't keep acting like this. She even got into a fight with him. She's completely lost it. I think she just can't stand that I'm doing well. But honestly, her problems are her own making. I feel no pity for her. That restraining order will be in place soon. And since I'm in a much better financial position, I'm already looking at moving into a bigger home. It feels like the perfect time for a fresh start. Being tied to someone like that is just embarrassing. I truly hope she gets the help she needs and learns to behave like a normal human being. She's even been horrible to my grandparents, who have now told me they want nothing to do with her either. The only person she has to blame for everyone avoiding her is herself. Honestly, I'm not worried about her anymore. This is my life now, and I'm moving forward.